Welcome to Lead Live, a conversation for ministry leaders by ministry leaders. I'm Josh Franks.
And I'm Clint Berry, and we're the co-founders of the Lead program. Today on the show, Josh and Clint recap Season 1 and look forward to Season 2.
What's going on?
Not much, man. Welcome into another edition of Lead Live. I'm Clint Berry alongside Josh Franks. Josh, nice memoji, by the way. Well done.
Thank you. Very accurate representation of my face.
Yes, that's true. However, your Facebook one, I don't know what they call those. Emoji man.
Facebook emoji.
I mean, it's not.
I think it's just avatar. Just avatar.
The avatar. Okay. Well, that looks just unkept, in my opinion. It's like COVID-19. I mean,
it was,
a haircut and a beard.
That was pandemic, Josh.
Okay. So a new avatar will be created. That's good.
I need to be able to adjust the bags under my eyes to make it really official.
Man, I tried to make my eye sockets really baggy also because I'm just tired all the time. Today on the show, Josh, it's just you and me, brother. We're going to bring in some of the production team, as we like to call them. And so we'll get their input as well. But what we want to do in this is our 20th episode of Lead Live. So over the last 10 weeks, we've done 2 shows a week. And we have had guests from other parts of the country, around the world. And I think we've had about 20 different guests on the show. And we've learned a ton. So what I wanted to do was just go back through what we've learned, maybe swapping back and forth, and then also kind of start thinking about next season's episodes. So we'll talk about that today.
20 episodes, millions of viewers out there. So we're excited to recap our favorite parts of this first season.
Yeah. So let's throw down, like, what was one of your favorite, maybe we have like maybe 3 or 4 each, but what was one that comes to mind, one of your favorite parts so far?
One of the things that I really appreciated in our conversation early on was dealing with the issues that our ministry leaders were trying to navigate during this time. And we had Dave Brunell, who's a friend of ours, on talking about the quiet of quarantine and hearing God in the midst of this time. And since then, I've had some conversations with other folks about kind of living in the in-between space. And what do you do when you've started a journey, but you haven't finished it yet, or you've been thrust into a crisis, but it hasn't resolved yet? And I just really appreciated Dave's thoughts on embrace the tension of not being there yet and not having it figured out yet, and allow that to drive you closer in your relationship with the Lord. Spend some time in the quiet, in the midst of the busyness of the scramble to try to figure out what you're doing, and spend some time in the quiet of this time to really hear from God. So it was a good reminder for me personally, for sure. And I think it was really helpful for folks that tuned in for that episode.
That's good.
How about you?
I think, well, one of my first ones was just the very first one that we did, which how far have we grown just in the way that we're able to do a conversation in this medium, and and try to interview a guest. Like, how do you do all these things? So it's really interesting to see and to be reminded of the growth, I think, that all of us as ministry leaders, not only in the technology, but just across the board, we have leveled up as leaders. And some of it had to do with pivoting. Some of it had to do with getting used to different technologies. But a lot of it, I think, just had to do with our own internal stuff. And so I think that was, like, does this work? And how, I mean, that was the first episode. And then how do you get a guest on and all those, and how far we've come in 10 weeks has been pretty impressive. But I think
it's great. Remember when we started in my office just doing a Facebook Live on my phone, we were like, we have no idea. We're trying to get our friend Spencer in.
That's right.
And we're like, that's not going to work. We're just all figuring it out. And so, I appreciate what you're saying about the growth. Hopefully some skill growth, hopefully some spiritual growth, not just physical growth with the quarantine 15 or putting on the COVID-19, but
right.
some actual spiritual growth and other things that are even more important.
Yeah. No, so that's on the top of my my list. All right, you share another one. What do you got? What else?
I loved our conversation with Dr. Mary Malik about leading at mental maximum.
Yeah.
I don't know what I learned in that, but it was just a really fun conversation, and she's brilliant, and probably I didn't learn enough because it was just way too much for my brain. And then afterwards, kind of in our green room where we just hang out after the show goes off the air,
Yep.
I basically had a counseling session with Dr. Mary, and it was beautiful and wonderful, and I deeply appreciate that. So I'm sure that was helpful to a lot of folks out there as well.
Yeah. I think another highlight for me was just like at the very beginning of this, like people were having trauma, like they're stuck, they're scared, and Ann Belke came on, and just her calming, just settled presence. It was just like really nice to just sit with Ann and to hear her just kind of take us through the process. And I think even I like reviewed that show a couple times, and I was so wound up, like not only the nerves of doing a live event, but also just like we were so wound up, and she was just able to take that and just ratchet it down for us. So by the end of the show, I was like, oh, thanks, Ann, because I needed to talk to somebody.
Right. It's so good because you and I are not known for being calming presences wherever we go. We're trying to hype the train and get things rolling. And so it's good to have those kind of guests who afterwards you feel like it's been a benefit to you personally and not just for our audience.
No, it's good. Yeah. So I appreciate, and if you're watching, I appreciate your ministry to us and to the lead program. How about another one from you, bud? What else do you see that you just will remember from our last 20 episodes?
Yeah. When we had Myron Pierce on, and Myron is a church planter and entrepreneur in Omaha, Nebraska, and he talked about planting digital churches around the world. My brain exploded and melted out of my ears. I had to put my AirPods in rice for a week to try to dry them out because his apostolic heart and his desire to see the gospel of Jesus Christ advance is just beautiful and encouraging and challenging.
Yeah, and I also appreciated his absolute like focus on discipleship. Like that is the engine behind this whole thing. And you would think that the engine would be maybe a little bit different. Like, oh no, it's about preaching and it's about how do you do the music and it's about how you do the production online. But that was so secondary. I mean, it didn't even make the conversation. He was always focusing in on, no, it's just about moving people in depth with Jesus. And discipleship is king in this digital platform. And I was really blown away by that as well. And just his heart for equipping people and mobilizing people was huge. I appreciated that conversation very much.
So good. And he's just fun to talk to.
Oh, always.
And was an amazing guest.
Yeah. I've read a couple of his books. He had, I don't know if you saw, but he wrote a new one called Black and White. And that was instrumental for me just getting ready for our conversation with Dr. Peng Fu Rhodes and Reverend Kelvin Walker this past Monday, which I'm still unpacking that conversation. And if you haven't seen that or, just kind of put that on in the podcast, man, it was such a great conversation and time. I don't know about you, but it was so good for me to understand this perspective of racism in the church.
Yeah, I would totally echo that. I was blown away by our conversation just this past Monday with our two guests, Kelvin Walker and Peng Fu Rhodes, and to hear their perspective. It's just so hard to understand and empathize when you don't experience the injustice and carry with you the fear of how people are, what assumptions people are bringing into interaction with you. And so it was amazing. And so I just appreciate their candor and humility in that conversation.
Yeah, in terms of leadership, Josh, I want to make sure that I have a presence about me now. Since Monday, I've not been able to work on this at all because I haven't even been with anybody physically. But I want to be one of those person whose presence brings a sense of, I am confident that Clint accepts me and wants all of me at the table.
Right.
The Kelvin's line of, am I really able to dine at the table, or am I just supposed to kind of eat here and be quiet? Like, I
Yeah.
want that type of invitation to, like, no, I want the full thing. And the reason why I want the full thing is, number one, I want to know you, right? I want to see you. I want to know you. The second is, if I get half of you or a third of you, right, or a tenth of you, then that's not going to help our mission, right? That's not
Right.
going to help us move forward. I need 100% of you dining at the table with us, and I feel like that's going to be a nugget that walks with me for a long time. So I was so glad that the Lord laid that one, because that was even a moment I was looking back at the tape today, and Kelvin literally like stopped and thought for a minute, and then came back with that line. I'm like, thank you, Lord. That was so good for me.
Very good. Very good. Well, as we've been 20 episodes in, we've been trying to figure this out, and it's been a fun journey. But it hasn't just been us. We are the beautiful faces, dreamy voices, and amazing, amazing conversationalists that are a part of Lead Live. But we have help.
Yes, we do.
Once you realize how hard it was going to be, we recruited help in. And so Brad is one of our, what do we call you? Production engineers?
Yeah.
Live chat bot.
Yeah. You don't need to get a fancy science degree to be an engineer.
Right.
That's right. Just press some buttons on a keyboard and hold a microphone.
Yeah. So Brad is cool because Brad is the events coordinator for the Lead program. So all of our events and activities that we do get to be designed by Brad. And so that's been great. He's been a great addition to our team since the beginning of the year. And now has been helping us with these live episodes and the podcast. And so lining up guests and doing all sorts of background production. So Brad, I really appreciate your work. How about you, buddy? Like, highlights for you and thoughts as you've been in behind the scenes in a lot of these conversations and taking the show notes. So if you're wanting to know like books that were mentioned or technology that's been used or different things like that, you can just go to leadcma.org/live, and then you can start clicking through the different episodes and you can see all the show notes. But and Brad writes all those. So Brad, what about highlights for you as you've been thinking about these conversations?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think when we first started talking about the Lead Live podcast, you kind of talked about this idea of just, man, like all of us have, as ministry leaders, at some point we talk to other people in ministry just about what life is like being a leader and how you go about with this little situation or that. And like with Lead Live, we just want to slap a microphone down in the middle of that conversation and say, let's catch this and share it with people. And that just captures my heart because I think so much ministry growth takes place when you're in the middle of a summer camp with a bunch of youth and you sit down with your small group leader and it's like midnight and all the kids are in bed. And you just talk about, man, how is this going? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
And I think that capturing those conversations is so important because that's where a lot of growth happens.
Yeah.
So for me, like jumping into this podcast just felt so natural and so important. And I think one of my favorite conversations was with Jelani Aswad talking about leading worship in a digital age, about how to remain connected to the Spirit as you know, the physical interactions that we have just drastically changed.
Yeah.
I appreciated how he said, like, you know, the first 4 weeks of this, we were kind of like scrambling and like, what are we doing? And after those 4 weeks, that first month, he was like, we can't just keep waiting for things to go back to normal. Like, this is the new normal. What is God's vision for us in this time? That just, man, that captured my heart. And the other thing that he said was that like with all this busyness of trying to learn a digital platform and how to love people when you can't see them physically and all that. And he just said, you know, with all of this busyness, like I need to remain still on the inside.
Yep.
That, man, there was just so much in that episode that captured me, but those were like two specific things that if those are things that are grabbing your heart and mine the way they did mine, like go back and listen to that episode, because holy cow, he just had so much to offer.
Yeah,
I agree. That conversation with Jelani
it was good.
Was so good, and I just appreciate that dude every time I hang out with him.
Yeah. Another practical one, Brad, was David Smith, right? And so when David was with us, we were talking about preaching to a digital congregation, and I just felt like the way that he showed us, like, hey, don't turn like this when you're preaching, you know, nobody wants to see your ear, you know, that sort of thing. It was just like, it was money. It was just one after the other, after the other, after the other. And that was a highly practical conversation for those of us who are in preaching ministries. Is there anything else like that, Brad, that you're like, man, this was a highly practical thought from one of the episodes?
I think our conversation with Chris Knudsen,
yeah,
that was also one of my favorites from a practical standpoint of just saying, hey, like, you know, Chris is a guy he's a vineyard guy, and he's been doing discipleship through online platforms, whether it's Zoom or phone calls or things like that, for years now. And so to have his insight on like, how do you run a small group through Zoom, you know, whether it's a group of 3 or, you know, the medium group of like 15, how do you balance out, you know, content driven stuff versus relational sharing stuff? I mean, he just had so much to offer. And even beyond the content that he shared, honestly, I think if you just go back and listen to that episode or watch that episode and just observe the way Chris asked us questions and observe the way he delivered the content, like he just has this sense of peace about him that I was like, man, if I ever deliver content online, like I want to deliver it like that guy.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly right.
Yeah, it was really good. Brad's not the only one that helps us produce this show. TJ Grabianowski has been a big help as well. He serves as our director of overseas trips. Is that his official title? What's his title? Director of trips.
International
for the lead international trips for the lead program.
Director of being awesome.
Director of everything.
Everything else.
Handles
That's right.
everything else. He handles. He's director of the kitchen sink. And just does a great job with that. So we are going to be taking a break from Lead Live over the next couple of weeks, but we're looking forward to season 2. Clint, what is on the horizon for season 2 of Lead Live?
Yeah, so we just wanted to kind of think out loud, and if you're joining us and you have a topic, I'd love to see your comment in the comments and maybe add in some topics. But Josh, what I've been putting down is just things in my head. Like, I'd love for us to have a conversation about addiction and bringing in a professional, because I think there's been, you know, alcohol sales are up. And yes, we're getting back into different things, but I think addiction among ministry leaders might be an interesting conversation. Alcohol, pornography, just addicted, food, the addictions. That could be an interesting conversation. Another one that we're doing for our lead students is a part of our curriculum. We have a series that we designed around church multiplication and church planting. And I would love to have each one of our presenters from that multiplication training and just kind of do like a whole church planting package where we're bringing in some of those leaders from across the country to talk with us and have an interview style about their section of church multiplication training. So I'm interested in something like that. I mean, is there anything like that you would want to have as a conversation in season 2, Josh?
No, I really am excited about that idea of having a kind of a church planting series that we would do. I think that's one of the things, hopefully for you as a leader in this time, you just haven't felt like you're trying to manage the craziness. For me, God's really clarified a lot of things in my life and in my heart as far as what he wants to give what he wants me to give time and energy to. And obviously there's patience and things like that are part of that. But there's more clarity than ever before about catalyzing church plants throughout the world. And so I'd love to be able to have that conversation. If you're tuning in, what are some of the areas of conversation, questions that you have as a pastor or ministry leader in whatever capacity you serve? What are the questions or what are the guests that you would love to see us interview and have a conversation with? Just post those in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Hey, another topic, Josh, we use the flipped classroom as a model within our lead experience. And I've got a great friend who is kind of like a guru when it comes to flipped classroom. I'd love to interview him because I think a lot of our discipleship needs to orient towards a flipped classroom, because maybe the in-person model of deploying all of the content in person may be all kind of wonky for the next year or something. And so I think now is the time to really educate and understand flipped classroom principles, where you give a student activities and workbooks and videos to watch, and then you get into conversational groups physically or online to discuss what they've learned, and more of an idea of transformational learning, and really kind of what the model that we use within the LEAD program. I think that could be a fun conversation as well, to kind of do something, kind of checking off the backbone of what we do in the LEAD program to share with you as leaders, but also to share with those of you who are thinking about becoming a part of the LEAD program. Like, what do they do and what is that like? And I think my friend Dan could bring a lot of expertise and experience to the flipped classroom conversation. Any other ideas from you, Josh, about what you would love to get into? Because I've got two more ideas, but I don't want to commandeer the mic.
Man, bring it. What are you thinking?
Well, like one other thought would be kids. So I would love to know more about children's ministry in the COVID-19 era, and how our children's ministry is going to reopen. And so we weren't able to get a guest on during this like church at home sort of season that we've had to do, but I would love to talk with some really great children's ministry leaders about how they're going to serve children and families into this kind of reopen and now this new COVID experience that could be a little bit weird. And then finally, I think, go ahead.
I was going to say, I agree with you. We just had a conversation with our area Awana representative, talking about some of the ways that they're changing their thinking as far as kids ministry goes. It was really encouraging conversation. It can be hard for sure, but this is the time to think creatively. And I think about how do we better make disciples, more and better disciples of Jesus, of our kids.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know, I'll just throw it out there. I guess if I were running the charge on a children's ministry, I would say to them, resource the parents. Resource the parents. Because
it's definitely a both and.
Yeah, for sure. But like we've swung so hard to just get with the kids. Let's bring that pendulum back to the middle and say you've got to get better at resourcing the adults. So, because if for some reason, snap, they've shut everything down again, which I'm really praying that they never do ever, that they shut everything down again, you've got to be able to pivot like that. And if you're able to have this really nice hybrid, that's going to win the day. You can make all sorts of moves within and without. And then finally, I think it would be outstanding. It was so good to have Kelvin on. And Kelvin, if you remember, is the district superintendent of the Metropolitan District of the Christian Missionary Alliance. I think it would be fun to interview the different DSs, district superintendents, from around the country. I think, because I began to think about this, like these are some of the top leaders within the Christian Missionary Alliance. They are leading massive movements covering multiple states. I mean, these guys are high octane, and I think it would be really fun to be able to connect with them and talk about an area of leadership that they're really passionate about. So I think there could be a whole like district superintendent series that we put together in this next season. So everything from kids ministry to church planting to flipped classroom to district superintendents. I think season 2 has the potential of being really, really fun, and another 20 sessions episodes to run through in that time. Brad, what do you think, man? Any other thoughts or conversations that you think we should have? Anything on your mind as a church planter and leader?
Yeah, something that I was taught really early on when I was an undergrad. My mentor and pastor at the time just talked about time management, and like as a ministry leader, like there's a lot that's expected of you. You're being pulled in a lot of different directions, and hopefully you're at a church where your elder team or your deacons or whatever is like, yeah, have healthy work-life balance and all that. But sometimes it's not the case. And so like, what do you do as a leader when you're being pulled in all these different directions of, your own family and your church family? And, some of us are bivocational. So how do you manage your job and your, ministry leadership? I think it'd be really important to have somebody on who just knows what they're talking about in that area and really share some practical wisdom on how can I manage my time well. That goes into like stewardship, and God gives us all these resources, and how do I steward the time that God gives me well?
It's good.
Cool. So that's a preview, at least what's on our mind and what we're going after. Brad's already working on guests for season 2. And so for those of you who've been watching like really faithfully, either live or on the recap or the replay, really appreciate you being a part of the conversations, chiming in with your comments, your expertise, and also your posturing yourself as a learner, which I think is the hallmark of a great leader, is that first they're able to learn. So it's really cool to kind of have these conversations. We're glad that you guys are joining us for that. So Josh, go ahead.
I was going to say it's been a blast. So thanks
been great.
Everyone that has checked us out, and hopefully you have benefited as we've tried to equip you to be a ministry leader.
That's good.
Yeah,
so
I was going to say, normally we jump into final thoughts. I'm curious if you had to recommend one episode to go back and listen to from season 1, what would that episode be?
Go for it, Clint.
Oh gosh. I think, I think it's just because I'm not great at it. I would have you go back. I will go back and watch or listen to the episode with Dave Brunel. I think that's the episode that I would go back in, and hearing God, sitting before him, being still. I think that would be an episode that I personally just need to go back into and listen to again. I don't know. Josh, what about you?
That's good. I think I would choose 2. The first one is called A Biology of Grace with Dr. Mary Malik. I think I misspoke earlier about which episode that she was on, but the episode is called A Biology of Grace. I think as leaders, we need to learn how to give ourselves grace and live in God's grace. It'll set you free. It'll give you more capacity to do what God has called you to do if you can really understand that. She does a great job helping us understand that. And then just from this past Monday, the conversation about race in the church was so good, so personal for us. And I just thought it was a timely conversation that the church needs to be having over and over again. Yeah,
absolutely. Brad, choose 1 or 2 or just however many.
Yeah, I think all 3 of us would be in agreement that this Monday's episode on racism in church might be the most important episode we had all season for a lot of different reasons. There's a lot of practical ways we can be better ministers, but there's also just a lot of good things to check your own heart and say, where am I at? Because this is a big topic. But outside of that, I really do think that the conversation with Chris Knudsen was just so good. Because when you boil down a lot of the Christian faith, it's asking the question, how can we disciple one another to be more like Christ? And when we have things like a pandemic happen, how are we going to do it when I can't physically be with you? I'm continuing to be impressed upon like, how am I going to do that? And I think that conversation with Chris was very beneficial in understanding how to do that better.
Yeah, that's good. Yep, I agree. Yeah. So if you're watching with us and, just want to give you where can you find all this? Well, the first is you can just go to our website, leadcma.org/live, and then you'll find just the history of the episodes there. But if you just type in then like live dash and then S1 would be for season 1, and then the episode number, you can begin to find all of those 1 through 20. And you can dive in even deeper. Also, these are all available as just audio only, and Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Like, we're on all those major channels. And then if you want to watch the episodes, these are on Facebook Live, YouTube, and Periscope. So there's lots of different ways that you can kind of get to the content, and you can have it in your pocket lots of different ways, and or on your television screen. Josh, there is one comment, just kind of a review of Digital Church and the racism of the church. Again, I would send you just back into those conversations that we and really then make some comments in there. Like, if you want to take this conversation further, I'm sure that Kelvin Walker or Dr. Pinkfield Rhodes would engage with you through social media, or maybe even set up a phone call for you to digest that a little bit better. But I'll be honest, like with the racism thing, I'm still learning so much in that I'm not even, I don't want to become an authority on that subject yet. It's just kind of saying I'm still a learner in that. But yeah, also socializing a little bit with Myron as well. And you can just go to myronpierce.com in order to connect with him there. But I think those two, primarily rewatch the broadcast and then jump into some of the things that they're posting on social media. Kelvin is posting a lot of things, and he's resourcing people in different ways through his posts. So you can kind of go to his Facebook page and check that out. That would be my suggestion for those types of things. But man, guys, it's been a good season, and I'm looking forward to a couple of weeks off because the workload on this thing is not small. But I really am glad that we're able to do it, and it's totally worth it. So we'll be back in the saddle on June 15th. And I think we are going to go to a weekly, probably not a two. We're still figuring that out if we have the margin for all of that, but probably a weekly show at minimum on Mondays at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And then we'll go from there. So if we have to add in something again on Thursdays, then we will, probably something that's very quick draw and unique. But the season will then run over 20 weeks instead of 10. Phew. To get everything lined up. All right. How's that sound, guys?
So good.
Awesome.
So with that, let's do final thoughts. Brad, you're first.
My final thought is that these are important conversations. Keep sharing them with your friends, whether they're ministers or not. We're all called to be leaders in making disciples on this earth. So if there's a conversation that you listen to and you go, man, like this just changed my world, it changed my heart, share it with your friends. It's so important that we initiate these conversations so that we can get better at loving on people and following Jesus together.
That's good. Josh, final thought for you.
Yeah, I think if you are trying to figure out how to do something new, just start doing it. Don't try to overthink it and make it perfect. Just like we did with Lead Live. We learned as we went, and I think it's better to take you got to take the first step to get to the last step. Right. But if you never take that first step, you'll never get there. So I'd say just go for it. Hopefully this inspires some folks to take that first step into something new.
Yeah, darn, you stole mine. Yeah, I was. I'm on that too. David Jones said it. We posted it as a quote on our social media. It's just like, if you guys want to, you should expect errors, right? If you're going to launch into something new, you should expect errors. Get used to it. And boy, have we made them, over the last 10 weeks. However, where we are now is not comparable because of the effort, because of the trying. I think we've all grown. We've grown as an organization within Lead Program. Our leaders have grown. You have grown in our viewership. And so we're really excited about season 2. And I'm with Josh. Take that first step. It is worth the risk, and give yourself that grace that's required in order to try, fail, learn, and try again. I think that's kind of the mantra that we have around the Lead Program is, you get fired when you don't try. But if you're trying and you're failing and you're learning and you're growing, and then you're going to give it a try again, that's in a day's work. Like we all need
Right.
that. So,
Yeah.
but not trying is, well, that's called giving up. So, guys, it's been a great little mini time for those of you. Again, if you go back, rewatch some of those episodes and catch up to speed. But guys, thanks for your time today. And leaders, we will catch you next time.